This conference will now be recorded.
Hi class, good evening and welcome to the second session. This is Amit here. Yes, and I think you all can see my screen, right?
Yeah. Hey, Amit, can I ask some questions?
Yes, Abhindra, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, I registered on this web ID, right? And
Okay.
when I was like on that home page, it says that the trial account, and after that, this like a curly, I mean, this where you can see your starting braces and this
Yeah, this one,
yep,
development.
that one, development.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I can see, but my screen looks totally different. I'm not sure why.
What exactly you see on your screen, I mean?
I mean, I can see it takes me to the workspace, and there I can see some view XML and some properties and events. I can show you quickly if you can give me a share, right? Just quickly,
Okay.
just very quickly. How to share my screen?
Okay, you can share. All right.
You see this? You see this? Where I am?
This is you are worried about. Okay, that's
Yeah, I
fine.
mean,
Don't worry. Yeah.
maybe I
Close that.
can close it.
Yeah,
Okay.
close that. And you have something like quick start application. Okay.
Yeah.
Just minimize that folder. Perfect. That's it. I think that is one application that is given to you by default by webide, so you don't worry
Okay.
about that. And whenever
Okay.
we have to create new projects, we will
Mhm.
always create our new projects from the workspace. So don't create it from your quick start application or anywhere. Create it
Sounds
always
like
from the workspace.
okay. I'm sure you will tell me the steps one by one, so we'll be doing it today. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Please take the control back. I'm sorry. Sorry for disturbing in the middle.
All right. So you can just unshare your screen.
Tell me which one is that?
Okay, fine. So now
Okay.
I think class can see my screen. And yes, this is our second session. Welcome to the second session of SAP UI5. Nice to see you back here.
So it sounds like within Workspace you have already created those projects. Rather, for us, it is not, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So if you remember yesterday's session, right? If you think about
Correct.
yesterday's session, yesterday what we did, if you would have focused on our yesterday session, then what I did yesterday, I right-clicked on Workspace, new project from template. So actually, in yesterday's session, I have shown you how to create a project in SAP UI5 and
Good.
especially in WebID, right? So, uh, so I mean, I understand that many of you are quite new to this SAP UI5. Maybe you are quite new to WebID, but then one way to go ahead in this course is that you need to revise whatever we have discussed in the previous session.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely important because just think about it. It's a new subject, and if you don't revise what we have already discussed, uh, you will
That's
definitely
the
face
problem.
difficulty as we move ahead.
Sure. Okay. We'll
Yeah.
definitely do that.
So one good thing that I did yesterday is I recorded the session, and just for our help, I gave that recorded session right over here. So if you go to this page and you scroll down, you get that yesterday's recorded session. So if in case you feel that you have forgotten any steps, you can definitely come here and recheck that.
Sure.
Yes, I did this one. Yes, really helped out. When I have faced the doubt, so I've gone to this recording session, which helped me a lot.
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, I understand you all are new to SAP UI5. That's why you are here. So you need some, some support. Definitely you need a support, and I'm there to support you. So what is your part is, when we have completed something, then you try to do that part, at least that part. But I am happy that you tried at your end, which is good, and which is perfectly good. All right, so this is how I'm going to schedule all the things. I feel now you have understood the pattern which we will take throughout this entire course, right? So every day I will, or whatever, I mean, maybe we will try next weekend, and we will take a big class next weekend, almost like 1.5 hours. So 1.5 to 2 hours, and this is the same way I will schedule the session. I think it's quite clear. I'm quite clear with the date and time. So it's not a misunderstanding to anyone. I believe
Yeah,
so.
I will suggest that let's do it on weekend, because on a working days it's very difficult.
Yeah, even to me also, because I have a tight schedule next week.
Yeah.
So, but that's fine. We will take it in the weekend pattern. Okay. So, well, that said, I am happy. Once again, I want to welcome all of you. I'm happy that you all are back over here, and we will continue with our second session. Just my only request to all of you is that you try something at your end. You do your part. That's very important. Okay. So, what next? Next is that in today's session, we will try to discuss, and I will take you very smoothly. Trust me. Uh, this is an online session. Just think about it. If I would have taken this session in a classroom, how effective it would have been. So, but then also I will take very smoothly through this entire SAP UI5. And by the end of this session, if you stick with whatever I'm giving to you, you will be absolutely comfortable with UI5. Okay. So keep a notebook or pen and pencil in hand, and just try to note down some important steps that will help you. So this is our second session of SAP UI5. What is my agenda for today's session? There are four things we will try to understand. I'm telling you right over here itself that there are four things we will try to understand. First thing that we will try to understand is MVC architecture. Okay, so we will try to understand what is this MVC architecture. Don't mind my spelling, because when I'm typing, maybe I misspell something. That's okay. I think you can understand what I have written there. So MVC architecture is the first thing that we will discuss. Second thing we will discuss is how MVC architecture fits in SAP UI5. So that is the second thing I will discuss. Then we will discuss how to create a project manually in SAP webide, right? So what did I say here? Third thing, very important, how to create a project manually in SAP webide. So in yesterday's session, we had seen that we can create a project using the webide template. Okay, but the good part is that template gives you a pre-written code, and it quickly completes a UI5 project for you. But then for a beginner who doesn't understand that piece of code that is written there, how I take them in the world of SAP UI5 is that I have shown you how to create a project with the template, but now I will show you how to create a project manually with webide. What is the benefit of doing this? You will have a complete understanding of what exactly you are doing. That is the benefit. Okay, so we will create a project using webide. When we will create a project using webide, there are four files we will come across. Four type of files we will come across. The first file that we will come across is your index.html file. So we will understand what is this index.html file. This is something we will understand. Okay, and after that, once you have understood this, then we will see another file called as index.js. We will understand what is this index.js file. All right. Sixth, we will try to understand what is a view.xml file. View.xml file, and seventh, what is controller.js file, right? So this is our today's agenda. I have made it absolutely clear in front of you what we are going to discuss today. And all right, so let me take this on a PPT. Okay. So these are the 7 things that we will try to discuss today. Although I said that there are 4 things, actually there are 4 things, because these 4 things that we have written here, index.html, JavaScript, XML, and controller, I consider it as one. So that's okay. So total, we are going to discuss these 7 things. Now, from yesterday's session, one thing you must have understood, that you need a web ID, correct? You need a web ID. So I believe all of you must have created your web ID account. All right. So all of you must have created your web ID account. So I'm going straight away to my web ID account, right? So this is my web ID account. Now this particular course or today's session is based on the article, that is 2 articles I will focus on today. One is your MVC architecture in SAP UI5 application. As we discussed that we are going to study this, what is an MVC architecture. And second is this one, SAP UI5 programming for beginners, part 1, start coding in SAP UI5. So this is the second lesson. So basically these 2 lessons is something that we will discuss over here. You have the lesson and everything right in front of you. So even after the course, you can go there and you can study and you can understand whatever is there that we have discussed in this class. So very first thing, MVC architecture in SAP UI5 application. But before we go to MVC architecture, let us first understand what is this MVC architecture. So I give a chance to my class. Anyone can say something about MVC architecture.
Hi, Amit.
Hi, Swati.
MVC architecture represents M for model, V for view, and C for controller.
Okay, model, view, and controller. All right.
So,
any further explanation?
Okay. Should I?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So model is something which holds the data.
Okay.
That's like a context node. And view is a page which is going to display on the web or on the app.
All right.
And controller is something which is going to get the data and going to display it on the view. So controller is something where we can, code the events and do the data bindings. I think so. Which controls everything which needs to be displayed on the view.
Fine. So this is what Swati has explained us, and nice. What Swati has explained us is very nice, and I understand from where these definitions are coming up. These definitions are coming up from our WebDin Pro experience, right, Swati? Am I correct?
Yeah, it's from CRM. Yeah, I have worked for
Okay, it's
CRM as
from
well.
CRM. All right. So yeah, because we all, I mean, majority of our class is from ABAP background, so perhaps you must be having a very fair idea of WebDin Pros. So, so you must have encountered your MVC architecture in WebDin Pro applications. So these WebDin Pro applications were created prior to this SAP UI5, and the main purpose of WebDin Pro applications was to bring your data, SAP data, to the browser. So that was one of the first attempt by SAP to bring the data to the browser. So there it was based on this MVC architecture. So that's fine. We will not discuss more into WebDin Pros. We will come back to our MVC. That's absolutely correct. What Swati has explained. MVC stands for model, view, and controller. No doubt about it. Now, for those who have never, understood about MVC architecture, or who have never heard of these terms like MVC architecture, you don't worry about all those things at all. So just remember one thing whenever I am taking a class, you don't worry about anything. That is what I want to say you. Don't worry. So model, view, and controller. Just think about it. These are three terms. Okay. So I'm introducing you to three more terms, that is model, view, and controller. Now, as Swati has mentioned very clearly, model holds the data. Model holds the data. So you just think about this part. All right. So model holds the data. I have highlighted that in bold color. So model holds the data, which means that model is nothing but your data. So whenever you talk about data, that data resides in your model. So where data resides in the model. In very simple words, if anyone asks you what is a model, so model holds the data, and the data actually resides inside the model. So if in your application you need data, you actually need to access your model, as simple as that. Okay. So I hope I'm pretty clear with model. Model is nothing but your data part of your application. Model is actually your data part of your application. So don't worry about this context node. Context node is something that was part of our WebDin Pro application. It was also there in CRM, which is correct. So, in WebDin Pros or CRMs, we call that model part as a node, right? Node holds all the data and all. So that's fine. But what you focus upon here is model is nothing but your data part. Data part of your application is model. What is a view? Obviously, view is what gets displayed on the browser or to the user. Whatever gets displayed, that is considered as the view, as simple as that, right? So all the user interface code, let me add something over here about view. So all the UI code is part of your view. I hope you understand this point. UI code, which means your, the UI code, user interface code, or actually the code that will render, the code that will render the view, which means that will create the view, is part of your view. Obviously, it is part of the view. So all that code resides inside the view. So whatever gets displayed on the screen, that is actually your view, which will be displayed to the user. So that is your view, and all the code written for the view becomes part of the view, as simple as that. So we have two things. We have the model, which is the data. View is what gets displayed on the screen. And the third thing is controller. Third thing is controller. In simple words, what we can say about controller? Controller is logic. Very simple. So if anyone asks you one simple definition of controller, controller holds all the logic. Controller holds all the logic. As simple as that, right? So look at this. We have the controller, it holds all the logic. So this is what Swati also explained us. It is going to get the data. Getting the data is nothing but writing the logic to get the data. Event, obviously it is also the logic to handle the event. Data binding, obviously it is a logic, it's a technique with which you create a binding between two different things, maybe two different elements. So in very simple words, if you talk about controller, controller is nothing but your logic part. So now we have understood what is the meaning of MVC. MVC means model, view, and controller, and we have understood what is the job of this MVC pattern. Let me tell you one more thing about MVC. That is, all your web applications that you have, all the web applications are based on MVC pattern in current time. So everywhere you will definitely find this MVC being followed. So MVC is being followed in current generation. MVC is being followed strictly. So majority of the web applications is based on MVC. Even your WebDin Pro applications were based on MVC, and even your SAP UI5 applications will be based on MVC. We will see that how. Okay, so we have understood what is MVC. Now, second question or second thing that I had written here is we will discuss about this, how MVC architecture fits in SAP UI5. But before that, I would like to ask the class one more question, that what is the benefit of going with this MVC architecture?
Again, I think I may answer it very vaguely, but the way you explain the MVC architecture, it looks like this is nothing but holding the data to show it to the various users. So this is into the scenario like where you are showing the app to the user and connected with S4HANA in the background. Such kind of architecture will be very helpful.
Okay.
It's a very vague answer. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's fine. We got to listen to something.
Amit, are we using MVC structure because of the security reasons on the web?
So this question is to the class. I just want to know from the class, I mean, what is the advantage of going with MVC? So anyone can answer that.
Yeah, Amit, I think it separates the view and the control logic, no, differently. So it will be helpful to separate the logic of the view and the control logic, everything for the view and the controller totally.
Separates the logic of the view and the controller.
Yeah.
That's
So it will be
nice.
independent.
So they will work independently. Fine. And then, so what is the benefit of this? Please elaborate if in case.
The development process would be much more faster here by using this architecture.
That's why I in any class there are a lot of participants who have a very broad knowledge in areas. So that's the reason I keep the class as open, and I look for some beautiful answers from the class itself. So I got an answer like development process is faster. So that is a very nice answer. So any more that I can get?
Yeah, Mitra. So basically, it's you need a framework so that you can plan how to, how do you keep the application, functioning, whether or not it's bigger or smaller. You don't want to keep everything in one place. The way I understand this, like, so you need a framework so that you can have all the view related items in one place. You can have all the data related data holding part at one end. You can keep all the controlling logic at one end, so that so it's easier to handle, it's easier to manage. So in that way the application will be in sync, and at any point in stage, if at all the application is going to get any bigger and bigger, and if a new guy comes in, it's easier to manage that way. So we don't want to keep everything in one place. So that's my vague understanding on this.
Yeah, that is also absolutely correct. So we see how we got some beautiful answers from the class itself. And first we got the answer of what is MVC, and then we got the answer of how it helps, how an MVC architecture helps any application, not just a UI5 application, but almost any application. Look at the answers that we have got. So separates the logic of the view and the controller. So that is absolutely correct, right? So if you follow an MVC pattern, you separate the logic of the view, you separate the view part, you separate the controller part, you separate the model part, right? So which is absolutely correct. This is the concept on which MVC is based, to separate the logic of the view, the controller, and the model. So then, so if we separate the logic of the view, controller, and the model, then what advantage I will get? So another answer I got is that developers can work on these different files independently. They can be developed independently. Absolutely correct. And then I got the answer, development process is faster. So when you start working on multiple modules of your SAP of your application, definitely the development process will become faster. And then I got one more answer, that when you keep your different components or modules of your application separate, then maintaining that becomes easy. Like how it's pointed here, that as your application becomes bigger and more complex, and a lot of files are coming into picture, then definitely if you have moduled your entire application in a very nice format, it will be easier for you to handle. So these are the most important points related to our UI5 so not UI5, basically your MVC pattern. So these are the most important points. And one more point that I would like to add over here is, apart from this separation of the logic and maintenance, another advantage of MVC pattern is reusability. So there are three advantages in short. One is we separate the logic part. Then the second is reusability and code maintainability. So, and one more point we can add over here, code readability. So it becomes easy to read a well modulated application rather than everything written in the same file. So these are the three most important points about following an MVC architecture. So this is that same thing what we have discussed right now. This is that same thing is being I have written here. Now, before we move ahead of MVC, I told you and we had one point how MVC architecture fits in SAP UI5. So this is something that we will try to understand now. So if you look at this structure that we have here, and if you try to correlate this structure with our yesterday's application. So I think yesterday I created this application. Look at this. This is a folder. This is an outermost folder. And inside this folder, we have a web app folder. And then there are some files. Don't worry about what these files are. Basically, these are supporting files for your webide. Don't worry about all
This
these things.
is the you created yesterday, right?
Yeah, this is what we created yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Right. So we have this outermost folder, which is your project name. Inside this folder, we have the web app folder, and then there are a lot of folders there. You have a controller, you have CSS, you have model, you have view, you have index.html. There are so many files there. Don't worry about what these files are and what do they mean, etc., etc. Don't worry about all those things. But what you need to focus over here is that your application, your UI5 application has structure. Already you can see that this template gives you a very beautiful structure. You have the controller, separate folder for controller. You have a separate folder for model. You have a separate folder for view, which means that all these different folders will hold the files related to that particular module. So which means that the view files will be all placed inside the view folder. Your controller files will be placed inside the controller folder. Your data related files will be placed inside the model folder. So this is uh, an application that was created by the webide template yesterday, and from this application we can see very clearly that whenever a UI5 application is created by webide, it strictly follows MVC pattern, right? So you can see from here very clearly, controller is your logic, model is your data, view is your UI part, and all of them are put into separate folders, which means that it is following your MVC pattern very strictly. So this is one just example that I have given here. So if you look at this, I have just highlighted over here what are the folder structures. So you have the controller, you have the model, you have the view, and SAP UI5 does follow your MVC pattern strictly. So that is one point which we have understood now. So this is that point. How it follows MVC architecture? It follows the MVC architecture by separating or creating different folders for your different parts of your UI5 application. Now, third thing. So now you have got some fair idea of how things are. It follows the MVC architecture, etc., etc. Now, the third thing that we are going to discuss now is how to create a project manually in webide. Now, why we are going to learn about how to create a project manually in webide? It's very important. It's very important from understanding point of view. So, problem is that you go to any tutorial or you go to any place, they will not actually tell you about why you should try to create a project manually. They will tell you, you go ahead and create the project from the template. So just 2 or 3 clicks and your project is ready. But that doesn't tell us from beginner's point of view what exactly happened inside that. Unless and until we are experienced and we know what has happened, if you have never created a project manually, you will not understand that part. So this is the third thing that we will follow here, that is SAP UI5 programming for beginners part 1, start coding in SAP UI5. So as I told you, this will be a quite practical session. Everywhere you have to do a lot of coding. So So we will be ready for that. Now look at this. This is your workspace. Inside your workspace, I'm going to create an application called as My First App, or you can give any name, whatever you want to. Inside this application, we will create a web app folder as usual, because we have to follow the MVC pattern. Inside the web app folder, we will have one controller folder because we want to separate our controller file. We want to separate our view file. So we will create the controller folder, view folder, and two more files. That is your index.html file and index.js file. Now, this is a highly simplified version of the template or UI5 application that we had created yesterday. So this is a highly simplified version. This is how I take my class from simple to a complex scenario, right? So this is a highly simplified version. So let us try to create this application in our webide. What you have to do, right click on your workspace, new, and you create a folder. Don't use project template or anything. You create a folder. Let us name this folder as okay. So I'm just giving some name over here. You can give any name, whatever you wish to. Why I'm giving a name with A is that at least it will come at the top. See here, at least it is coming here. So that's fine. So this is the name that I got. Currently, if you look at this, inside this folder, we don't have anything. It's an empty folder. So again, right click on your folder, go to new and select folder, give over here web app. So remember, your UI5 coding is case sensitive. Okay, so anything that you write in UI5, you have to be very careful about uppercase, lowercase, and all those things, camel casing, etc., etc. You have to be very careful about that. So web app folder, it's all in small, so don't create it in caps or anything like that. Follow exactly the way it has been created or it should be created. Don't do these kind of mistakes. Okay, so web app small. So you see here, I just created the web app folder. Now look at this, web app small, right? You have to follow this. And web app folder is done. Now right click on web app folder, new, create another folder. What is the name of the view? So what is the name of this folder? Obviously it is view. Again small, view is done. And finally, again right click on web app folder, new, create another folder, and this time we give the name as controller. Keep the spellings and all correct. So because your application will not tell you that you have made a spelling mistake. So CONTRORRER is correct. Controller is done. So now we have the structure ready. Look at this. I just created the structure right in front of you manually. We have the web app folder. Inside that we have the controller file, view file, not the file, but at least the folders. So why don't we create the file also? Yeah, go ahead.
Another silly question. So you have view, you have a controller. Where is the model?
Model we are not using at this moment, right? So when we need data, when we need data, then we will come to the model part.
Okay, I mean, and then we can create also. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. All right, so we have this structure ready. All right, now we will try to create our files. What are the 4 files that we need now? What are the 4 minimum files that we need to create a web application? Is your index.html, one JavaScript file, then the view file and the controller file. So let us try to create the view file first. Right click on the view, new, file. Let us give a name like main. So I'm giving the name as main. So we always have to give the extension whenever we are creating a view file, either through manual approach or through the template, whatever it is. It will always follow the extension of .view.xml. So you have this main.view.xml, right? So you can give any name over here. It's not mandatory that you give the name as main only. You can give view1, view2, xyz, whatever you want to give, you give. But there is a naming convention we follow. So normally the first view that we call is called as the main view. If you're creating other views, you can give some relative name to those views. So since this is the first view, we call it as the main view, mainview.xml. So we create this view. Look at this, it's absolutely empty file. There is nothing over here. Think about it. Why I have created an empty file for you? Because I want you to understand exactly what is written inside an XML file. All right. If you go to the template already, it has written a lot of code for you. A lot of code is already written, but we will try to understand what exactly we need to write inside a view file. So this is your view file. Similarly, let us create our controller file. So the name of the view file and name of the controller file should always be the same. Okay, so I'm going to create a controller file with the name as main.controller.js. Now look at this. The extension of a controller file is .controller.js, which means that it's a JavaScript file. Your view file was an XML file. If you remember from our yesterday session, I told you that there are other type of view files as well, like your XML, JavaScript, and JSON and HTML. So if we have not gone to that part, let me just tell you that part also. So types of view in SAP UI5. Okay, there are 4 types of view. You have your XML view, you have your JavaScript view, you have your HTML view, and you have your JSON view. There are 4 types of views. So if anyone asks you in interview how many types of views we have in UI5, answer is 4. These are the 4 views. Okay. Now, which is the view that we are going to use? We will always use this XML view. Always. Right? So that is the reason I created my view as a .xml view. Now, why we will always use this XML view? Because SAP suggests, or basically SAP follows using XML views. So that is one of the major reason. All your code throughout the web, wherever you go, you try to explore some code, etc., etc. Once you have done this exercise, definitely, or once you have done this course, definitely you will refer to the code here and there in your internet. So wherever you go and you try to find a code, all those code will be written in XML, right? So why all those code is written in XML? Because SAP follows XML views. And if you try to look into any standard UI5 application, you just go and look into any standard UI5 application, all the code is written in XML, right? So you got this point. We will follow XML views. Now, that is not actually the the full and final reason of following XML view. The other major reason of following XML view is that it will make you to follow MVC patterns strictly, right? So whenever you create a view with XML, you by default follow the MVC pattern. If you try to create a view with JavaScript, what will happen? There is a high chance that you might write logic inside the view. There is a very high chance of doing that. Very high chance. So if in case you are a project manager, if in case you are a delivery manager in your company, and you want to follow some coding standards, you need to ensure that whatever project you are delivering is all written in XML, and your UI5 consultant is not using JavaScript, right? So these are the 2 reasons why we are going to use XML. First is SAP tells us that you go and use XML views, don't use JavaScript or other type of views. And then another reason for not using JavaScript is that it will reduce your MVC. The way you want to follow MVC, it will reduce that. So let's say you have written a complex application in JavaScript, and half of the logic you have entered inside the view itself, half of the logic you have written inside the controller, and then you leave the project and you go and someone else comes in, and then he is trying to figure out where is the logic. You understand? So these are few things that we need to take care of. So but just remember, there are 4 types of views. Now we go back to our application. So the name of the controller, main.controller.js, has to be exactly the same as the name of the view. So we have created 2 files. Very good. Let us minimize these files or folders, and let us create another 2 files. Okay, I told you there are other 2 type of files that we need to create here. What are those? One is your index.html. So new file, index.html. Done. And look at this, I'm creating it right inside your web app folder. And then another file that I'm going to create is index.js file. Index.js file, JS file, JavaScript file, right? So we just created a very simple application, not exactly an application, but a structure of an application. And we did that manually. We didn't do it using the template, we just created it manually. So by doing this process, by following this process, you understand four things. What are the four things that you understand, which is very important in order to understand UI5, is what is the purpose of these four files. This is the basic and the most important concept. So by doing this or by following this exercise, you understand what is the purpose of these four files. And once you understand the purpose of these four files, you have got a right platform on which you can create or on which you can build or extend your knowledge. Okay, so coming straight down, so normally these files is written by your template itself. So whenever you create an application through the template of webide, it will create all these files for you. So but in my style of explanation, if you look at this, everything that I will explain or everything that I'm trying to make you understand, it's all through code, right? So whatever code is required, where it is required, we will try to follow everything one by one. So very first thing is index.html file. So this is the first file that we are going to handle. What does index.html file holds? This is the first thing that we are going to understand. So which means that we go to our index.html file and we are going to code this part. All right. Now, before we code this part, what is an index.html file? That is, we need to understand. And what is the purpose of this index.html file in a UI5 application? That is also we need to understand. Two things. What is this and what is the purpose? So we need to always understand purpose of something that we are doing, why we are doing that. We need to understand that purpose. So I just took that code from there to over here. Now look at this. It's an index.html file. And there are a few points that I want to highlight about index.html file. What are the points? Very first point. This is the first file that gets called when you call your SAP UI5 application. What did you understand by index.html file? This is the first file. This is the first file which gets triggered whenever you call an UI5 application. So which means that this is the first file which will get loaded. Okay. Now, as you can see,
meaning if I'm in the Fury app, I'm clicking on an app. So does it mean that the very first file which is going to be referred is index.html? That's what it means?
Yes, that's what it means. But then I will tell you something over here that currently we are not discussing about Fury. So if you talk about any standard Fury app, so it's not necessary that it will have an index.html file. Okay. So it's not necessary. So the way Fury works is slightly different. I will tell you about that later. But at this moment, if you're creating a UI5 application, if you are a new beginner and you are trying to create a UI5 application, and you cannot create a UI5 application without an index.html file at this moment.
Okay.
At this moment, right? So it has to be the first file which will get loaded up. Fury works slightly different, and there are a lot of things out there yet to be discussed. So Fury works slightly different. So it's not necessary that your Fury app will have an index.html file. How they work and what is the pattern that I will try to explain you sometimes later. Okay. So first point, index.html file is your first file that will get loaded. Very good. Now this is an HTML file. I have understood that. So what kind of HTML it is? It is actually HTML5. HTML5 is the latest version of HTML. HTML started with 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. HTML5 is the latest one. What is the benefit of HTML5? It supports a lot of media related applications. So that is the benefit of HTML5. That is the reason you see all these beautiful web applications on which you work every day without even knowing what is the technology that is powering those applications. So the technology that is powering those applications is HTML5. Okay, so if you have to call an HTML5 document, and you have to give this first line, which tells you what kind of HTML it is. What I will do is I will try to increase the browser's zoom so that you see a bit better the code, right? Is it good?
Yeah.
Fine. This looks good. So this is your first file. So whenever you open up, or basically the first statement, line number 1. So whenever you open any HTML file, you will find this kind of statement. This kind of statement tells you that basically I'm going to use HTML5, or this particular document is based on HTML5. Perfect. So you don't worry about this thing. But if in case you have a document of HTML which is on older versions like 4.3.2.1, then you will find over here www3 schools is equal to HTML4. Some big kind of definition will be there, which tells you that it's a older version of HTML. All right. So that point is clear. Now I told you in yesterday's session you don't have to be an expert of HTML. I told you that. So that is what I'm going to explain you, that how much you should know HTML, and how much is required. You don't have to be an expert of HTML. So if you look at this, any HTML document will start with an HTML tag. So HTML and a closing HTML. So just think about it. Whenever we are working with HTML, so it will start with an HTML tag, and then some set of code, and it will end with an HTML tag. Fine. So any HTML document follows this pattern. So even our index.html file also follows this same pattern. Fine. Now look at this. Inside the HTML file, you will find two important sections. One is your head section, one is your body section. All right. So there are two sections. One is your head. Okay. So it will end with your closing head tag. And then another one is your body section. So again, it will end with a closing body tag. Fine. So there are two sections, two important sections in any index, any HTML file, not only index, in any HTML file, we have these two sections. So head tag and the body tag. Now, let me open up a question for the class. So what is the job of this head tag? Anyone from the class?
To maintain the header.
Like anything which you wanted to display on your web page, it's on the header area. Anything you want to show, you just mention there, and then it will display on the page.
As an example, a title.
Title. Yep.
Okay. What is a body tag?
Body tag is like the area where you define all the logic, whatever is you're going to display on the web page, like within the white area just below your toolbar. So you can write your name, you can write any table, you can create any link where you can navigate between two different pages.
Okay. What is the difference between head and body tag?
Head is nothing but anything, whatever you show in your browser, like above the toolbar, like a title, right? That's a header part. But in your Internet Explorer, just below the toolbar, like file and the views and options, etc., that's your body area. In the body area, you show the real content of the page. Whatever is like when you go to google.com, you see the Google text box. So those are nothing but the.
Okay. Okay. So header is the, yeah, okay.
Okay, head part is nothing but it's like a brain of the body, and which we can't see. So here we can define whatever libraries we are going to use, for example mobile, desktop, and body part is something whatever we want to display on the page, so that content we can define in the body part.
Okay, fine, perfect. So I think our class understands what is a head tag and what is a body tag and what is the use of that, right? Two important points that we can highlight over here, obviously, that is, you know, what we have just got. The body is nothing but your content. So the real content that you want to display on the web page is your body part, and your head part or head section is actually loading all the files, or one very important point about head is instruction to the browser, right? So user will see the content of the browser what have put in the body. Yeah, that's correct. And head is the brain of HTML. In head we put metadata, script, style. Yeah. So what Karthik has written there, right? So metadata, script, style, etc. So basically these are all instructions to the browser, right? So in very simple word, head is instructions to the browser, body is actually the content. Very simple words. Now, this same concept is followed in our UI5 application also. If you look at it, we have the head section, we have the body section. Let us try to understand the head section based on the data that we have just got, or based on the discussion that we just got over here. That is, it holds the metadata, script, style, and it is an instruction to the browser, etc., etc. We got all this information. Just remember one more point, other than the title that gets displayed on the toolbar, there is nothing in the head section that actually we should write in order to display it on the browser. We shouldn't write anything in the head section that we want to display as a content. So we separate the instruction to the browser from the actual content. So that is the two parts. That's why it is very important that we separate these two things into two sections. Okay, we come back. Now this is my head section in my UI5 application index.html5. That is line number 3 to line number 15. We have the head section, right? Now we just got one answer from Karthik. He said it is metadata description. So we can see here there's a meta tag out there called as charset UTF-8, right? What is this charset UTF-8? Anyone?
I mean, it is the character set which is supported by all the browsers.
Correct. That's correct. So it's just an instruction to the browser, as we just discussed. To display all kind of languages. Yep, that's correct. So it is just a instruction to the browser that support all the different types of character sets. So this is an instruction to the browser. As simple as that. This is absolutely correct. So we have one meta char set UTF-8. Let it be as it is. Don't worry about that. Then we have title section. So anything that you want to place over here in the title section, you can place over here. And this is something that will come on the browser. So this is the toolbar, right? So as you can see here, SAP UI5 programming for beginners, or etc., etc. So whatever you write here, that becomes displayed on the toolbar. So that is your title. Again, easy to understand. Then we have a script section. Script section. Okay. Now in this script section, if you see, this is the most important part of our UI5 index.html file. So all these things are quite standard. You go to any file and you will find all those things. Now what is the difference from other files and UI5 index.html file is this script part. So this script part is known as the bootstrap of SAP UI5, right? So what I'm telling about this script tag, it is also known as the bootstrap, or actually your entire index.html file is known as bootstrap file. But your script tag actually is the bootstrap of SAP UI5. Now, what does this bootstrap do? Any answer?
I think it helps in loading the libraries.
It
Okay.
loads up
application
the
is
SAP
deployed.
libraries.
Okay. SAP UI5 libraries. Let's be very specific.
Yeah.
And then the theme that we are going to use in the application, theme we are going to use in the application. All right. Other library objects that we want to load, then your namespace declaration, right? So all these things are happening inside that bootstrap. This bootstrap. So if anyone asks you a simple question, what is the bootstrap in SAP UI5? The answer is that the bootstrap actually loads all the UI5 libraries along with the theme and other supporting files. It also gives a namespace declaration, right? Or in other words, you can even say resource root declaration. Resource root declaration. So these are the few things that happens inside your bootstrap. These are the few things that happens inside your bootstrap. Look at this. The very first thing, source. So this is loading your supporting libraries, the UI5 libraries, the theme, SAP Belize theme, right? So this is the theme that will be displayed or used in your UI5 application. Now libraries. So one of the important library that we are going to use is sap.m. I will tell you more about it, don't worry. So for the time being, let's have a bird's eye view on what is there inside this script tag. So there are a few things. We have the libraries, the core library files of UI5, which is required to run your UI5 application. If you just try to remove this one line from your index.html file, your file will not execute, your program will not execute, it will break, it will not show you any results. Why is the reason it will not show you any results? Because this is loading the framework files, and if the framework file is not there, your UI5 application will not compile in the browser, it will not execute in the browser. So now you understand the purpose of this core file, core library files. It is required to run your UI5 application. Done. Theme, yes, what theme you want to display in UI5 application, that is all written over here. Now, what is the main library that you are going to use in your application? We will discuss about this in later. Just after and I have discussed this bootstrap, I will come back to this again. Now, we are going to use sap.m, but what are different type of libraries, etc., etc. We will try to understand that. Now, data SAP UI resource roots. I told you we need to declare our resource roots. What is this resource root? It means that where your files are placed. For example, in this application, if you look at this, so my resource root is actually the, compared to my index.html file where my files are located. So this is kind of a path, right? So this is kind of a path where dot slash indicates the location of index.html file, and compared to this path where your other files are located, that is what it will try to tell to the browser. Got it? So this is your resource roots. It is kind of a information to the browser where your files are located, or what is the structure you are following, which is the main file, and compared to that file where other files are located. Done. Okay. Then next we have compatibility version is equal to H, right? Data SAP UI compatibility version is equal to H. Now this one attribute. So these are all attributes. Data SAP UI or data resource roots, data libs, data theme. These are all attributes. Now this one attribute tells that basically it's an attribute for the Internet Explorer, especially for Internet Explorer, which means that it tells you that go and try to use the latest JavaScript. Or actually your Internet Explorer doesn't use JavaScript, right? They have their own scripting language. Microsoft follows their own scripting language, and Microsoft follows their own scripting language.
So if I'm using Google, so I need to change it to Google Chrome?
No, you don't need to change it to Google Chrome. This is one line only for Internet Explorer. What is the problem is that I think anyone who is from web background might be knowing this, that there was a very cutthroat competition between JavaScript and then Microsoft scripting language. So you remember JavaScript was actually created by Mozilla, and then later on Sun Microsystems acquired it, and then it became part of the Oracle, etc., etc. So there's a lot of story behind that, but there was a very big competition between these scripting languages. So even for today also, the scripting language that Microsoft follows is different from JavaScript, right? So just to tell the Internet Explorer that use the latest scripting language, for that purpose only we are using this compatibility version is equal to H. And your question about what about Google Chrome, you don't have to worry about Google Chrome. Google Chrome actually uses the latest scripting language. So we don't have to worry about Google Chrome. The problem comes with Internet Explorer. So your Chrome and Mozilla, they use the latest scripting languages. So we don't have to worry about that. Okay, there is also one big discussion in the market that if you think about it, which browser is the most secure? What is the answer?
Microsoft Edge.
Chrome.
Right, Chrome. Okay, so any other answer?
Latest I heard
Safari?
Edge.
Safari. Okay, fine. We got multiple answers, and I think we just named all the browsers. So somebody said from security point of view, Microsoft is the best. And I got another answer like Chrome, and then the third answer we got is Safari. I think that belongs to Apple, right? Okay, so this is a big discussion. Okay, so this is a big discussion. We will not go into that, but uh, from developers' point of view, if you think about from the developers' point of view, Chrome is actually the most useful one. So if you look at this over here, also I'm using Chrome. So Chrome and Mozilla, they give you a lot of features with which you can do a lot of debugging in any web application, which is not supported in Internet Explorer. So I think that gives you some clue of what is the difference between the two. So that's fine. We will not discuss more into that. Okay, so your organization might be using a browser, so let them use that browser. We don't have to worry about that. But if in case it is using an Internet Explorer, just try to, we will add this attribute. Done. Okay, so we have understood all these points. Now there is another point, data SAP UI on init. So what basically this means is that this is an attribute which tells that when your resource loading or when loading of this file is completed, then you initiate an initialization event. So this is kind of an event, and when this loading has completed, then what you do is you call this particular file. Now if you look at this module, my first app index, so basically this is nothing but calling this index.js file. So although we don't have to mention over here .js, and later in our exercise, you will see that I'm going to change this index.js file to component.js file. We will do that later. But for the time being, you can understand that when the loading of these files is completed, then you go and call your index.js file. Done. And data SAP UI asynchronous true, that means that you load these files in asynchronously. What is asynchronous and synchronous? Obviously answer is very simple. Synchronous is one after the other loading of the files. Asynchronous is parallel loading of the files. Obviously asynchronous is always faster compared to synchronous loading.
Is it fair to say that in any SAP UI file, the script is mandatory and that script should have all these data, SAP UI and theme and libs and whatever we are talking here? Every component should be always present there. Is it fair to say?
It's fair to say that. So whatever components we have mentioned here, that is almost like the most commonly used components. So it's fair to say that
And
we
it is
need
must.
this. Yeah, most of them is a must. Like if you delete this theme, it won't know which theme to execute. If you delete this, it won't know which library to execute. If you delete this, it won't know which source from where source. You understand. So if you are working on Internet Explorer, you delete this, perhaps your application might break on Internet Explorer. If you delete this, it won't know which file next to call once this index loading is done, right? So kind of these are the most important attributes that we have here. So once again, let me just try to recap what we have discussed in index.html file. We have discussed about
just a simple
yes,
query.
yes,
Since
Bharat.
we mentioned as asynchronous true, the sequence of all the steps is not necessary, is it? It can be in any.
Sequence is not necessary.
Yeah. Okay.
It can be anything. Sequence is not necessary. Okay. So yes, if we try to recap what exactly is there in the index.html file, the most important thing of index is that it helps in bootstrapping. What is bootstrapping of UI5 application? Bootstrapping is loading the core library files, the theme, the library, and declaring the resource roots and the on init or kind of synchronous or asynchronous loading of the file. So these are the part of your bootstrap. Fine, that actually completes your head section. So we just discussed about the head section. What is there in the body section? If you look at the body section is very, very easy to understand over here, because there is nothing in the body section at all. It's an empty body section, which means that we are not going to use this body section for our UI5 display of data or for our UI part. We will use the view file and we will use the controller file. We will not use this body part. So that's why it's absolutely empty. But one important thing that you should notice over here in the body file is that it has an ID called as content. So whenever I have to call this body file, I can call this body file using the ID is equal to content. Okay, so this is the most important thing that we need to understand over here. That's it. So this is our index.html file. In short, we have the bootstrap and we have the body section in our index.html file. Done. Okay, now once you have done that, then let us try to complete the code of index.js file quickly. And yes, whatever we have discussed, you can go over here and you can read about all those things that we have discussed over here in theory. All those things that we have discussed here is written very clearly in these points. So if you try to revise, yes, this is the best place to revise. You just read through this article once and you will recall almost everything that we have discussed in this class. Okay, so we are kind of running a bit short with the time, but let me just quickly explain you this index.js file. And then we will close today's session. So index.js file, just think about it. This is the second file that will get called. How it will get called? It will get called because you have mentioned this file over here, which means that once your bootstrap is done and everything is loaded, then you call this particular file. So once index.html file is completed, it will go and look for the index.js file. It will try to execute this file. Now, later on, as I told you, we will try to remove this index.js file to a component.js file. We will understand what is that component and all, etc. later. But for the time being, just this is your first time you are coming across a JavaScript file. If you look at this file, it is just 11 lines of code. Only 11 lines of code. But very important, if you understand this 11 lines, you kind of understand how a controller file or any JavaScript file is written in UI5. You understand my point?
SAP UI core MVC, is it like a SAP defined or SAP supplied path? SAP supplied libraries?
That is a SAP supplied library.
Oh.
Okay. So I will tell you. All right. So what I'm saying here, I'm telling you a very important point over here, that if you go to this controller, you see there's a controller.js file. Just try to look at the code of this controller.js file. You see here, you have the define and all those things. So a piece of code is written here, right? And if you go to my index.js file, a similar piece of code is written here. So what I'm going to tell you over here is that if you understand this simple piece of code, 11 lines, you won't face difficulty in any controller file or any JavaScript file, because all of them follows the same pattern. That's why in our yesterday's session, I told you very clearly that you don't have to be an expert of JavaScript. JavaScript will come to you indirectly. This is the first time you are coming across a JavaScript file, and this is the pattern that we follow. JavaScript, this is the pattern of JavaScript that we follow in UI5 application. Your main task is to just understand this 11 lines. That's it. Just understand these 11 lines. Now, very first line, line number 1, or let me show you something. You collapse this line number 1, and you see it is actually a function. sap.ui.define is a function, and everything inside it is inside the parameters, and it ends with a semicolon. What did you understand by this one line? Now look at this.
Can we change the parameters?
I will come to that. Okay, look at this. This is your main.controller.js file, which was created by whom? This was created by your webide template. Now look at this. sap.ui.define. This is the parameter. So anything that is inside your brackets is nothing but your parameters, and then it ends with a semicolon, right? So you go and look into any controller file, they all will be following this same pattern. Same pattern. All right, so now let us try to expand this function. Now inside this function, I'm trying to make you understand what is there. Just focus on what we are trying to understand over here, and you will not face difficulty in any JavaScript file. So very first thing, look at this. This is a function. This is a standard function of SAP UI5 library, sap.ui.define. And inside this function, if you look at this, there is a curly, or basically there's an array. Array, you understand, right? So it's a array bracket. Square bracket is like an array bracket. And here we declare all the files that we want to load. So it's not like just you load the files in index.html file and you are done. No, it's not like that. Wherever you need further files, you keep on loading in those files as well. So here we are going to use an XML view file. So it depends on what kind of code you are trying to write there. But just remember this point that we load all our files right at the very beginning inside this square brackets. So if I go to your main controller.js file, look at this. Here it is trying to load a controller file, right? So right after this, it is trying to load the controller file. Correct? Same concept. So it is trying to load the file. But in this case, we are trying to load a view file. Okay, so that is one point. This kind of loading is known as module definition. So if you come back to my article, you see here I mentioned very clearly that whenever you are using a UI.define function, right, you are basically trying to use asynchronous module definition. You are trying to use asynchronous module definition. So this is how we actually create an asynchronous module definition. Look at this, sap.ui.define followed by brackets, and inside the bracket you keep loading whatever files you need to load. And when you load these files, okay, one more point, remember about UI5, that, or actually one more point about JavaScript, that in JavaScript everything is an object. Everything works like an object. JavaScript is 100% object oriented language. Everything works like an object, right? So as soon as you load these files become like an object. So they are available to you like an object. So you can pass these objects inside the function that is being called right after the loading of these files, right? So you have the function, and then whatever files you are loading here, you are passing those objects inside this function. Okay, coming back to our code, look at this. So here I'm loading this file, and then XML view, the last word, I'm passing it like an object. I'm passing it like an object. Done. So same concept follows in any JavaScript file. Look at this. So we have this array. Here I am loading this file. This is known as asynchronous module definition, because your sap.ui.define is actually asynchronous module definition, and I'm getting this file as as an object. I'm passing it like controller. So that's it. So this is the pattern that we need to follow in a JavaScript file throughout our UI5 application. There is no exceptions at all. You have to follow this pattern, as simple as that. So load the files and pass it like an object. Done. Now line number 8 says use strict. So actually use strict is a kind of instruction to JavaScript that follow JavaScript strictly. So if I try to remove this piece of code over here, it doesn't matter. It will execute, but then it's always a good coding that you should use a better JavaScripting coding standard. So that's the reason you should use this keyword use strict. Use strict doesn't allow you to write improper JavaScript code. So what is use strict? It's a standard instruction to JavaScript that follows JavaScript strictly. Done. That was line number 8. So the same concept is follows here also. 8 and 9, all standard. Now after that, there is line number 11 and 12, which is kind of a return statement over here. And let us see what we have here. Here I am not actually calling a return statement. What I'm doing here is that I'm creating a view. Look at this XML view, because I got this object over here, XML view. So XML view, then it calls a method, object, method, create. And inside this create, I'm trying to create a view. So name of my view is app. This is the name of the view I am going to give here. This part is actually your namespace. So this is your namespace .view.app, which means that go and follow this path, that is view, and then inside that your the file. So view and the file. So look at this. Here I mentioned the name of my file as main. Here I mentioned the name of my file as app. So obviously this will not work. So I need to change this to main. All right, and I need to also take care of this namespace. If in case I have not written the namespace correctly, then I need to take care of that thing also. So I will try to change all these things later, but I'm just trying to explain you these two files at this moment. So we got this XML object. With the XML object, we use a create method, and I'm creating a view, and then I'm passing this view to the content. If you look at this, oview.placeAtContent, where was this content defined? This content was defined inside the index.html id is equal to content, right? So what exactly this means? Create the view and place that view on the content, which means your body part. So anything that is available on the body part will get displayed on the browser, as simple as that. So this is what will happen, right? So anything that is written there, it will get displayed on the browser. So now you have understood that basically what we are doing here, we are calling the bootstrap. Then inside the bootstrap, we are calling the index.js file, and index.js file, we are creating the view and we are placing it on the body tag, which means that it will be available on the browser to be displayed. This is what we are doing here. That's it. Okay, so we have just completed half of our project, or half of our application that needs to be created, and remaining half let us discuss in our next session. All right, so next session I will make it a bit longer, and we will try to complete this whole application along with some other important applications like creation of JSON object. All right, so yep, now we are very fast. I mean, we are going actually very fast. So every class will be a lot of code, so just be ready for that. And next class we will discuss about completing this application, so this one, and then we will also discuss about how we can use a JSON model in our application, what is a model, etc., etc. We will discuss about all those things. Okay, what is your work? What is your homework? Is that you complete up till here. You complete up till here. If you can, you complete this entire thing. If you can, there's no compulsion. So if you can read through this, and if you can understand what is happening, and if you can create this entire application, you can create this. So at the end of the application, we are just trying to display a message. So if you can do this, well and good. If you can't do this, that also is fine. Anyways, I will take care of that. But at least you create these two files and complete up to this level. Okay, so there's a question, where have we defined OView parameter? Where is OView? Okay, so we have not defined OView parameters. So what exactly happens is that when we are calling this view, so automatically whatever you are creating here, that gets passed as a parameter object to the function. So we have not declared that. So you will see this kind of JavaScript coding a lot in JavaScript. So I know this is first time you are looking at this kind of code, but as we go ahead, you will understand, or you will become familiar with how these things are being passed. Got it now? What is resource root? Yes, resource root is your, let me tell you that. Okay, so let us think about it. This is my namespace. Actually, resource root is nothing but your namespace. Yesterday we had got a very nice answer about namespace from Sharan, I think. Okay, so he explained us what is a namespace, right? So this resource root is actually a combination of namespace. So let's say this is your namespace, and then this is the name of your application. So this becomes your resource root. Look at this. So here, when we were creating our application, so let me take you to the original application. So this is your original application that we had created yesterday. Let us go to its index.html file. Look at this. So I had given the namespace as test, and then I had given the name of my application as Amarman, as you can see here. So these two things combines becomes your namespace actually, right? So this is one part. And then what is this dot slash? What is this dot slash? This dot slash actually indicates that compared to your index.html file, where your other files are located. So if your index.html file is your base file, then compared to that, where other files are located. So that is what it tells. Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we are fine, and let us stop here for today. Try to complete your task, and then we will meet next Saturday. Probably next Saturday we will try to start a bit early. Let's say 6:30, and then we will continue up till 8:30. So 2 hours will be fine. And same we will follow on Sunday also, 2 hours on Sunday. Yes, Divyanshu is saying that in this project we didn't create namespace, then what to write there? So Divyanshu, think about it. Yes, we didn't create namespace because we didn't follow the wizard of template creation process, right? We didn't follow the wizard of template creation process, but that doesn't mean that we didn't created our namespace. So if you try to write anything like this, name of your application and followed by anything over here. So if I want to change this, so let's say if I want to change this, so I can give over here my name space. I'm just trying to make you understand, and then this becomes my project name. So I change here to AMARMN underscore. Now is it fine? So what your template does automatically to you, that same thing you can do manually over here. So this is very important. This resource, we will come across this resource route again and again, because for the time being you just understand one point, that this resource route will tell you how your other files are located compared to your index.html file. Got it? So yeah, so just remember this is your namespace, this is the name of your project, then goes this dot slash, which means that it tells you this is the location of my index.html file, and based on that you try to locate other files. Okay, so do one thing, all of you try to create one application, this much what we have discussed up till now. You try to create that application. If you have completed up till there, then do leave a comment over here that yes, first application completed. So go to this page, leave a comment over there. With that I will understand how many of you could do that part. All right, so I will come to understand how many of you could do that part, and then based on that I can think about it, how I will take care of the next class, right? It is very important for me to get the feedback of how much you were able to grasp the things and how much you were able to do at your end. All right, so that's it. We are good for today, right?
Thank you very much.
Any questions, class? Yeah, okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit.
Thanks all.